Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wondered why some people seem to bounce back from really tough times while others struggle to get going? This new research dives into how the brain recovers, using catatonia as a kind of natural experiment. Imagine a person going through a really severe illness where their ability to move, speak, and even think clearly is severely impacted. This is catatonia. What is fascinating is that when people start to get better, it is not like everything just snaps back all at once. Instead, it often happens in a specific order, like a staircase. Scientists noticed this pattern and called it the Saito Loop, but they didn't know why it happened this way. This is where our study comes in. The researchers asked if this recovery order, this Saito Loop, is just a random pattern that happens to occur, or if it is actually built into how the brain works. They proposed that this order might naturally emerge from a way of thinking about the brain called active inference. Think of active inference like the brain constantly trying to predict what is going to happen next and updating its beliefs based on new information. Catatonia is special because we can actually see the recovery happen. Step by step, the researchers in a previous study had already identified this specific order of recovery across 5 different brain functions. They called these functions computational quantities. They are like precision in sensory input, precision in making choices, precision in valuing outcomes, how quickly things change within a situation, and how slowly things change between situations. They observed that recovery consistently followed this sequence: sensory precision, then policy precision, then motivational precision, then fast volatility, and finally slow volatility. But the big question was, why this order? This new paper aims to provide the theoretical explanation. Instead of just observing the pattern, they wanted to see if the pattern could be predicted from the fundamental way the brain processes information. So how did they figure this out? They didn't run experiments on people for this particular paper. Instead, they used a lot of math and computational modeling to look at the structure of active inference itself. They treated the brain like a computer program. They looked at the different parts of this program and how they depend on each other. They started by asking how many different brain functions we can actually measure or identify separately from observing someone's behavior. They found that there are exactly 5 key functions that can be lost and regained independently in catatonia. These are the 5 precisions mentioned earlier: sensory precision, policy precision, motivational precision, fast volatility, and slow volatility. They are called precisions because they represent how much weight or confidence the brain gives to different sources of information. This is where it gets really cool. Once they defined these 5 functions, they looked at their relationships. They asked, for function A to work well, does it need function B to be working first? They treated this like building blocks, where you can't build the next level until the one below is in place. They discovered that the data from the brain's information processing naturally creates a specific chain of dependencies. Think of it like this: to make a choice, policy precision, you first need to be able to understand what is going on around you, sensory precision. Without clear sensory information, how can you confidently choose? And to value the outcome of your choices, motivational precision, you need to be able to make choices in the first place. Then, to notice small changes in your environment. Fast volatility, you need to be able to value the outcomes of your actions. Finally, to notice bigger changes in how the environment itself is structured. Slow volatility, you need to be able to track those smaller changes. This creates a strict order. This mathematical analysis, purely based on the structure of information processing, showed that there is only one possible order in which these 5 functions can logically depend on each other. And guess what? That order is exactly the same as the Saito Loop they observed in people recovering from catatonia. The researchers never told the model what the recovery order was. It emerged naturally from the dependencies. Now, just because there is a logical order doesn't automatically mean recovery in time will perfectly follow it. Recovery speed can vary. However, they added a condition. They said that if the brain's recovery process is like a river flowing downhill and the speed of each step isn't too fast compared to the step before it, then the order will be preserved. This is called the gating, dominated regime. This means that if the brain is recovering in a normal way without some parts recovering unnaturally fast, the order they predicted will be the order we see in real life. They also explored what happens if this condition isn't met. One of the most powerful aspects of this research is that it is testable. They claim that if a patient's recovery order deviates from this predicted sequence, it could mean something specific about their illness. For example, If a person regains the ability to make confident choices, policy precision, before they can clearly perceive things, sensory precision, that is a reversal. This would suggest that their brain was spared that particular deficit at the start of the illness. They even did a check, kind of like a scientific audit. By looking at lots of different possible ways the brain's recovery could be structured, they compared their proposed model, the Saito Loop, to other logical possibilities. They found that only their model based on this hierarchical dependency could explain all the observed features of catatonia recovery, like the specific order and the fact that different functions can recover separately. So, what is the big deal? This research suggests that the order in which people recover from catatonia isn't just a random coincidence. It is a fundamental consequence of how the brain is wired to process information. The Saito Loop is a structural output of the brain's architecture. This has huge implications. For clinicians, this means that if a patient's recovery deviates from the predicted order, it is not just noise, it is valuable information. It tells us which parts of the brain's information processing were spared early in the illness. And that could help tailor treatments or understand the illness better. This framework provides a computational language to interpret treatment response and design new studies. While this is a computational theory, they do offer some ideas about what brain regions might be involved for each precision. For sensory precision, it might be sensory and prefrontal areas. For valuing outcomes, maybe dopamine pathways. And for tracking changes, areas like the anterior cingulate cortex. But they stress this is just a hypothesis. And the core of the work is the computational structure. This paper doesn't claim to explain every single case of recovery, but it makes a strong case that within a specific framework of how the brain works, the observed recovery order in catatonia is a necessary outcome, not just a lucky guess. It turns an empirical observation into a theoretically derived and testable prediction. The beauty of this study is its theoretical approach. They use math and logic to explore the fundamental structure of active inference. They didn't need to collect new patient data for this paper, relying on the structured observations from a previous study. They basically built a mathematical model of how the brain processes information, and then saw if it naturally produced the observed recovery pattern. They looked at the 5 key precisions as the building blocks. Then, using principles of structural identifiability, they figured out which of these building blocks had to come before others, for the system to be understandable. If you remove a lower block, can you still understand the higher one? If not, there is a dependency. It is important to note that their claims of uniqueness are within a specific set of assumptions about how the brain works, described as model classes, and they aren't saying this is the only way the brain works, but within their defined model of active inference, this is the unique outcome. This is a really elegant piece of work because it shifts the focus. Instead of trying to fit the model to the data, they've shown how the data's pattern can be predicted from the model's underlying structure. It is like understanding the rules of a game so well that you can predict certain outcomes without even playing the game. This study is a fantastic example of how abstract computational theories can illuminate complex biological and psychological phenomena. Its biggest strength is deriving a clinically observed pattern from first principles of information processing. This moves us from a descriptive understanding of catatonia recovery to a potentially explanatory one. The fact that the theory is falsifiable in a single patient is also a huge win, allowing for direct empirical testing of its predictions. However, like all research, there are limitations. The recovery dynamics, while compelling, rely on a gating-dominated regime, which is a sufficient condition for the predicted order, but not necessarily a universally required one. Future work could explore what happens when this condition is violated more broadly. Also, the mapping to specific neural circuits is speculative. As the authors rightly point out, the real validation will come from prospective studies that directly test these patient-level predictions about onset and reversal patterns. Ultimately, this research gives us a powerful new lens through which to view recovery from severe psychiatric conditions. It suggests that the order of healing isn't arbitrary but a reflection of deep organizational principles in the brain. It is a reminder that understanding the fundamental computations underlying mental processes can unlock crucial insights into psychopathology. What do you think about this research? Does it change how you think about recovery from illness? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the science of the mind, please give this video a like, subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.